stories where words ignite. From reports to diaries, our stories take flight. With vocabulary gems and plots so grand, we'll transport you to worlds across every land. Get ready to listen to stories to ignite your imagination.
Chapter 3. The Pursuit. Edward Eggleton, now a whirlwind of confusion and canine instinct, stood frozen in front of the science lab, his heart thumping like a drum in a marching band. The students, their expressions a mixture of awe and concern, gathered around him, their whispers hushed as if they were discussing a top-secret mission. "Mr. Eggleton, where are you going?" Lucy asked, her brow furrowed with worry. "You can't just run off like this." But Edward didn't have time to explain. The overwhelming urge to bolt was too strong, pulling him toward the nearest exit like a moth to a flame. He glanced over his shoulder, and the sight of Mr. Snodgrass looming in the hallway, hands on his hips and eyebrows knitted together in a frown, sent him into a tailspin, quite literally. With a burst of energy, he darted out of the science lab and into the bustling corridor. "Stop that man!" Mr. Snodgrass shouted, but Edward was not a man at that moment. He was a creature driven by primal instincts. He dashed past students who gawked at him in disbelief, their mouths agape as if they had just seen a unicorn juggling flaming torches. "Why is Mr. Eggleton running like a deranged squirrel?" Timmy wondered aloud, trying to keep pace with the whirlwind of chaos that was now his teacher. Edward burst through the double doors of the school and into the bright open air, where the world spun around him like a carnival ride. The smell of freshly mown grass filled his nostrils, and he felt an exhilarating rush as he sprinted across the schoolyard. The sun beamed down, and for a fleeting moment he felt free, until he remembered his responsibilities. What about his job? What about the students? Panic clawed at his insides as he skidded to a halt, panting heavily. He was supposed to be their guide through the wonders of science, not a runaway canine. As he stood there, catching his breath, a realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. He couldn't go back in that state. How would he explain his bizarre predicament to the principal, or worse, the board of governors? He could already picture their faces, a mix of disbelief and horror, as they contemplated a mini schnauzer teaching chemistry. Edward's thoughts were interrupted by a rustling in the nearby bushes. He turned, his heart racing with a mix of curiosity and dread. From behind the foliage emerged a scruffy-looking mutt, its eyes glinting with mischief. The creature sniffed the air, then trotted over to Edward with a swagger that suggested it owned the whole yard. "Hey there, buddy," Edward said instinctively, his voice betraying a sudden affinity for barking. "You wouldn't happen to know how to reverse a transformation, would you?" The mutt tilted its head, as if contemplating the question, then let out a low growl that sent shivers down Edward's spine. "Great," Edward muttered. "I'm talking to a dog like it's a wise sage. What's next?" Just then, the sound of commotion erupted from the school. A group of students, led by Lucy, burst through the doors, their eyes wide with determination. "Mr. Eggleton, get back here," she shouted, her voice ringing clear above the chaos. Edward felt a surge of guilt wash over him. He couldn't leave them hanging. They were his responsibility, his little scientific adventurers. But as he turned to face them, he felt that inexplicable pull again, urging him to flee. "Must resist! The urge!" he growled, wrestling with his instincts. But before he could make a decision, the scruffy mutt barked loudly, startling him. The sound echoed in his ears, and suddenly a plan began to form in his mind. A wild, reckless plan.
Diamond stories where words ignite. From reports to diaries, our stories take flight. With vocabulary gems and plots so grand, we'll transport you to worlds across every land. Get ready to listen to stories to ignite your imagination, where each story